Marine electronics help make the fish finding and catching process easier and faster than ever before. Now, it may be a bit confusing when you look at all the options and features there are to choose from. So today, we're going to help give you a better understanding and break things down piece by piece from the back of the boat all the way to the front of the boat. This is Angling Buzz, brought to you by Omnia Fishing, a smarter tackle shopping experience. Looking back, it's pretty incredible how fast electronics have changed the way we fish. 2D sonar, high-end mapping, side imaging, down imaging, 360-degree imaging, shallow water anchors, and trolling motors that can hold you in place with a push of a button and follow depth contours. And most recently, forward-facing sonar. Today, we're joined by Jeremy Smith of Angling Edge. Jeremy, what are some of the more important fishing technologies that are available today?
Oh man, Troy, there are so many technologies today that help us catch fish, but let's start with mapping, which I think is really important, not only for finding and catching fish, but also for navigation. So a couple tools with the mapping are, one, you can see the contours of the lake, and some of the tools that Humminbird has with their Lake Master chips is a feature called Shallow Water Highlight. Now, especially in the spring, this is an amazing tool that will show you everything is red. It'll show you where the shallow water is, and you can set that to whatever depth you want, say 10 feet and shallower. And a lot of times, never having been to a lake, you can say, well, the fish are going to be in this zone in red. Also, for navigation on big bodies of water like Lake Vermilion or many of the Canadian Shield Lakes, you set that up where you see the red and you just don't drive near it when you're navigating, so you can safely get from point A to point B. Then of course, as the season progresses, you've got a feature called Depth Highlight, which will allow you to highlight certain depth ranges within the lake. And naturally, fish move from shallow to deep throughout the course of the season. And believe it or not, this feature showing things in green will teach you a lot about the features of the lake. You might see an inside turn, a place where the contours are tighter, or maybe a more subtle point that's coming off of a specific structural feature. So having mapping really makes the fish finding process easier, and typically finding fish is the hardest part of angling.
And what about trolling motors?
Yeah, trolling motors make boat control so much easier than it was in the past. I run Minn Kota Ultrex, which is a cable drive motor. It's got power steering assist, but you know, back in the day, if you had a Fortrex, you know, as soon as you took your foot off the pedal, you'd be drifting wherever. But now, of course, the cable steer has spot lock in it, but also I can run around with a little micro remote or the remote that comes with it, and now I can position the boat anywhere within the boat, so I don't have to be locked down to the cable drive foot pedal to steer. The spot lock feature is great. Of course, if you've got the Humminbird units, you get other features like follow the contour and many others. So the way you can control a boat now with the trolling motor is absolutely amazing. Even if I'm trolling with the big motor, I still have my trolling motor down, because if I hook a fish, I can put this in neutral, I can spot lock or keep the boat going at a slower speed. It just makes life so incredibly easy, and when your boat's in good position, you're in a good position to catch fish.
And what about depth finders? What can you share with us about the recent sonar technologies that are available?
When it comes to sonar features, there's a lot of great technology out there. The biggest one that everybody's talking about right now is, of course, live imaging. And I'm telling you, this stuff is absolutely amazing. One of the most revolutionary things to come along in angling. So my 2D sonar, my down imaging, my side imaging, they tell me where the fish were, but live imaging tells you where they are. And in many cases, you can see fish react to baits. Not only does it do that, I can see structural features ahead of me, having the transducer mounted on my trolling motor. So what's amazing to me is I can go to bodies of water I've never fished before, never seen, and with the transducer on the trolling motor pointing forward, I'm able to fish this spot like I've known it for 30 years, because I'm not going to run over fish, I'm not going to run over a weed bed, I'm going to be able to cast to that rock that's out in front of the boat. So live imaging is, of course, very, very amazing, but all these sonar components come in handy when you're fishing. I use every single one of them each time I'm on the water. 2D sonar for driving fast, looking at what's down there. I use down imaging to truth what I'm seeing with my 2D sonar. And then of course side imaging I'm using to get a good picture of what the habitat looks like on the sides of the boat.
Yes, and it's quite incredible how fast anglers today are adapting to these new technologies. Thanks, Jeremy. Up next, it's our highlight destination feature. We're going over to North Dakota, and who knows North Dakota better than Jason Mitchell?
You know, the Missouri River system gets a lot of attention for fishing, and rightfully so, but you know, in particular, Lake Sakakawea has just been on fire in recent years. And all. Lake Sakakawea is a massive reservoir. It's the third largest man-made reservoir in the United States, over 180 miles long, and so it's a big piece of water. And the thing about Lake Sakakawea is very cyclic in the sense that you'll have low water levels that might impact the forage base, and you have high water where the fishing just goes through the roof. And so right now we're on the high end of the cycle in the sense we've had water in the reservoir in recent years. Even though the water's dropped the last couple of years, it still hasn't affected the forage base, which is primarily rainbow smelt. Besides smelt, you're also going to see some cisco, you're going to see some young of your perch. There's a few mountain whitefish. You know, there's lots of forage for these fish to eat. In fact, when you graph Lake Sakakawea, especially in the summertime, all you see is bait fish, but it's a phenomenal walleye fishery with a lot of big fish. I mean, there's been a lot of fish over 10, 12 pounds caught out of Lake Sakakawea in recent years. Besides being one of the very best walleye fisheries in the Midwest right now, you also have king salmon, you've got big pike, you've got a phenomenal smallmouth bass population that hardly anybody fishes for, and so tremendous amounts of opportunity. Then obviously you look at nearby Lake Audubon, that's a tremendous walleye fishery in its own right, and it's probably one of the best smallmouth bass fisheries in the entire state. Lake Sakakawea, Lake Audubon, which are just separated by the Highway 83, and the neat thing about Lake Audubon is you don't have the big fluctuations compared to Lake Sakakawea in the sense that they draw down the water in the fall, they pump it back up in the springtime, but you don't get the wild fluctuations, and so there's a lot more weeds at times on Lake Audubon versus Lake Sakakawea. And when you look at Lake Audubon, it's really evolving into a premier muskie fishery. There's been tiger muskies in Lake Audubon for several years, and then they started stocking purebred muskies in Lake Audubon. But it is by far North Dakota's premier muskie fishery. And you know what, these fish don't get targeted a lot compared to a lot of muskie waters, and so these fish, you consider them stupid. I mean, it's a phenomenal muskie fishery. Lots of fish starting to approach that 40-inch range right now, and so it is a tremendous fishery to definitely keep an eye on. Now, when you look at below Lake Sakakawea and the Garrison Dam tail race, that's another unique fishery in its own right, in the sense that there's great walleye fishing in the tail race, but also catch some really big rainbow trout, and every once in a while you'll catch a king salmon. Cold water habitat coming right out of the bottom of the dam, and then as you move down the river, you know, you get towards Bismarck, for example, you get into the Missouri River, upper end of Lake Oahe, you know, that's a fishery in its own right that is renowned for walleye fishing, but what's made Lake Oahe so interesting the last couple of years, at least that Missouri River upper end of Lake Oahe, is that there's been a lot of big fish caught in the last, say, 3, 4, 5 years, okay? State record's been broken a handful of times. There's been some really big fish, you know, fish over 13 pounds. I don't know if anybody can say that they've ever seen more big fish in the upper end of Lake Oahe right now, and attributing to a lot of different things. There's a lot of bait fish for these big fish to eat, and also there was a year class that was really strong that's starting to die off of old age, and a lot of those fish, a lot of those females are over 12 pounds. And so is there a 12-pound fish behind every sandbar? No, but if you look at the totality of Lake Oahe right now, there's probably never been so many fish over 10 pounds as there is right now. And so lots of things going on here, especially early in the year. Then, you know, you skip over to Devil's Lake and Stump Lake. You know, you've got world-class walleye fishing. You've got a tremendous population of white bass. You've got big northern pike. Then obviously the perch that make these fisheries famous in the wintertime. But again, we're going to get a little bit of bump in water. We don't know how much yet, but relatively speaking, both those lakes are relatively high. There's going to be a lot of fun shallow patterns especially. What's cool about both those fisheries is that you can go into a warm bay, winds blowing on a shoreline, and basically cast jigs and plastics, crankbaits, fish shallow, and along those shorelines you're going to catch pike, you're going to catch white bass, you're going to catch walleye. It's just a way to cut up your hands really good in the springtime because you're going to catch a lot of fish.
North Dakota is a really fun place to fish. I go there often, not only shore fishing, but also kayak fishing and in a boat, and camping too.
It's time for this week's Buzzbite Reports. To kick it off, we're going to head to Devil's Lake with Jason Mitchell.
Got a full live well here. I mean, this took, goodness, maybe an hour and a half. Just a lot of nice eaters, you know, just pitching plastics, pitching crankbaits up shallow, but there's been some big fish getting caught here too. And probably the biggest thing is, you know, we were keeping the boat, say 6 to 8 feet of water as an average, that we've been casting in. It seems like dark bottoms, the cattails or pencil reeds have been really good right now. We've been fishing back in a lot of the bays. But jigs and plastics, your mimic minnows, just a 1/4 ounce or an 1/8 ounce with a, say, an impulse. Shallow running crankbaits have been big, you know, especially this water's warmed up when we've had some wind, and so the rumble shiners have been hot. And then there's also the shallow running shad wraps. A few people are throwing countdowns as well, but I would say the rumble shiner and the hit stick are probably the two baits people are talking about the most right now. Anything that's got chartreuse or silver seems to be working well, but the big thing is follow the wind. Wherever the wind's blowing in on a shoreline, cast it, cover water, and you're going to find some fish.
Thanks, Jason. Now let's head over to Michigan with Captain Ron Dome Jr.
Right now, everything's fishing phenomenally, from smallmouth bass to lake trout and Cisco. Right now, the lake trout and Cisco are out in the range of as shallow as 20 out to 70, 75 feet. Primarily casting blade baits has been really well. Also throwing and retrieving through the water column small 1/2 ounce to ounce jigs for those fish that are kind of suspended. It's beautiful. As we move back to the bass, they're up pushing shallow right now on the Grand Traverse Bays, anywhere from 5 to 15. Throwing a lot of swim baits, a lot of jerk baits, covering a lot of water. They are not on beds yet, they're all pre-spawned, so be sure to fish a lot of water and get around fish, because if you're just fishing water and not seeing them, you're not going to be swinging. On the inland lakes, our smallmouth are bedded up pretty hard right now. Lots of fish on beds, so be sure if you're targeting those, take care of them, quick picture, throw them back, and don't harass them too much. Be sure to get out and enjoy this amazing weather this week in northern Michigan. The fishing's really good.
Thanks, Ron. Now let's head to the Alexandria area with Joe Segura.
Still catching a lot of walleye around the area, a lot of panfish, bass, northern, really a huge mixed bag. For the walleyes, been sitting in 3 to 8 feet of water, casting jigs, minnows, jigging a plastic or lindy rigs, crankbaits even. But that low light time period is when they're gonna be up in that area. So early morning, late evening, or at night is where you're gonna find those. If you're gonna fish walleye during the day, I'd probably get the outside weed edge, 16 to 25 feet of water, same tactics. Panfish, they seem to be kind of a mix. They're all the way up in the pencil weeds, all the way out to over 10 feet of water, 5 feet down. So really just get a bobber rig set up, small jig and a plastic, and set that for about 5 feet. You can set that as shallow as 2 depending on where you are fishing. So for those panfish are going to do quite well. And as far as bass, they're up under docks as well as over the top of those weeds too. So just start shallow and start moving deeper, and you should be able to find plenty of fish.
Thanks, Joe. Now let's head to Leech Lake with Toby Cavalli-Vog.
The water temperature's warming up. We've had flat, calm, warm, sunny days. Now we have waters in that 60-degree mark. From north end of Portage Bay down through Walker Bay, we have mid to low 60s, which means the bite seems to be getting better as the day progresses. Watch out for those majors, those moon phases. Right now, like 2 o'clock today was really good. The warmest water, plus it's the most active time for the fish. We're still using stand-up jigs with shiners, the bread and butter lindy rig with a shiner or a leech. Leech has actually started working really well today. And again, slip bobbers. Slip bobbers are real deadly with forward-facing sonars. So the 3 bread and butter tactics: lindy rigging, jigging, and bobbers with leeches. Shiner minnows, leeches. 2 main baits for Leech Lake right now. The fishing's been good. Definitely low light periods in the middle of the day when the water's warmer is the best fishing period of the day.
Thanks, Toby. Now let's head to Lake Vermilion with Billy Rosner.
Hey, it's hard to believe it's muskie season coming up already this weekend. The muskie fishing on Vermilion early is one of my favorite time of years to fish them. Get back into those shallow bays and coves, find some sand, that's a plus, that's where they like to spawn. I like throwing small baits like the Blue Fox inline sterner baits, your Rapalas, your larger Rapalas, small Suics, your jerk bait, swim baits like that Storm 360, those big 6-inchers, those all work really well. This stay kind of back a little bit, you're going to find these fish in the 4 to 8 feet of water. I like, throwing a small bait cast and reel, like a 300 series of some kind, 40, 50 pound braid, and this fan cast work those areas. And the big plus is in the afternoons when those bays warm up, they'll warm up 3, 4, 5 degrees in the afternoon, and that's enough to get that metabolism going in those fish. In those same areas where you're finding the muskies, you should find some really nice pike too. Have a great week and be safe out there.
And now it's time for our cool products brought to you by Omnia Fishing. We're going to start with the Rapala touchscreen tournament scale. Even if you're not a tournament angler, this is a very easy to use scale. You have a couple different options for weighing your fish here with this hook, or a clamp. I've used this a lot over the years. It's really handy, really easy to use. You have a nice bright LCD screen. You can store up to 8 different weights on here. You actually have culling tags if you do fish tournaments. If you don't, this is just an all-around awesome scale, the tournament touchscreen scale from Rapala. And next from TH Marine, the Wave Away Screen Cleaner Kit. Now this is a must. It's great to have both in your boat and also in your vehicle. This can clean your sunglasses, your sonar, GPS units. Has a nice carry bag, comes with a microfiber cloth. You have a lot invested in your electronics, and this is a great way to keep them clean, keep hard water spots off it. The Wave Away Screen Cleaner from TH Marine. And next, the boat-to-trailer automatic launching and loading system. This thing is pretty incredible, especially during the busy times at the launch ramps during the summer, or if you're fishing by yourself, you can easily just pull the handle, launches the boat, and then when you're taking your boat off the water, it easily slides in here, clamps in place. It's easy to install, the boat-to-trailer automatic launching and loading system. And next from Dakota Lithium, their 12-volt, 280 amp hour battery. This is a dual purpose battery you can use for both starting 1,000 cold cranking amps or deep cycle. It comes with an incredible 11-year warranty, thousands of cycles you can use this. It's also a lot more power dense when you're just looking at the size, comparable to regular lead acid batteries, and it also charges 5 times faster. The Dakota Lithium 12-volt, 280 amp hour dual purpose battery. And lastly, the LakeMaster VX chip. These chips are truly awesome because of the amazing detail. They're available for regions all across the U.S. You have custom color palettes, depth highlights, whether you're fishing in reservoirs and rivers that fluctuate. This is a great option. It is compatible with Humminbird and Minn Kota's One Boat Network, the LakeMaster Digital VX Map Chip. Be sure to check out Omnia Fishing for a lot of great products, as well as a smarter tackle shopping experience. And up next, it's time for our Technique of the Week.
So here's how I use mega side imaging. Number 1, always get the biggest screen you can afford. That's number 1. Number 2 is your settings. Right here, so contrast, 10, sharpness off. Sensitivity, you're gonna be 14 to 16, somewhere in there. Both. Chart speeds 5 and 4 or 2 and off. And now here's the most important part. All these marks here, those are all walleye. Like right there's a walleye laying on the bottom. You can kind of see his outline. Here's some more coming onto the screen. There's another one there. And all we're doing is just going down the break line. You can almost see the shape of the walleye here. I'm gonna blow this one up here just so you guys can see this. You can almost see the walleye outline on that right there. That's super cool. And that, the little hot white grain of rice there, that's actually the fish and that's the shadow off the fish. So that's how you kind of know when you're dialed, is when you're getting a nice clean image like this. So in here, here's a really good one to point out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a little school of fish right there, like 10 fish. All these in here, I would call this a large school of fish. So when you're looking on your side imaging and you see this, you want to fish this. You don't want to be talking like me right now. You want to either get your crankbait out, get your jig out. Like this is what you're looking for. Again, that right there, that's what they call a money. That is a school of, we're not gonna count them, but right there, if you're pitching jigs or trolling or doing whatever, you wanna throw your jig just past those fish and start catching those. I mean, that's literally, when guys talk about a 25, 30 school, that's what it looks like. This is all sand, and again, 1.9 is like my search speed, and big school of fish, spread out school of fish. And now, how do I interpret this? These fish here, believe it or not, those are spinner fish, those are trolling fish, they're a little laid out. That school of fish there, that's what I would call a jigging fish, you know, pitch and jig fish or trolling jigs, like anytime they're tight like that. So this school of fish, as an angler, you're gonna have to determine, Am I gonna pull cranks through here? Am I gonna pull spinners through here? Am I gonna pull jigs through here? So now, how do you use them both together? You have walleye here, you see this? This is a great show and tell right here. This is a big enough school of fish right here. I'm gonna go over here and I'm going to hit mark, and I'm gonna drop that waypoint right in, cursor over, right in the middle of that school. So that populated that waypoint right there. And now I know whether or not, if I'm gonna go back and pitch jigs or if I'm gonna troll through there, I know that there's a large school of fish right there. So a lot of times what I'll do when I'm doing the 1-2 punch on side imaging is I will go down the break or whatever the piece of structure is, and I'll pepper it with 6, 8, 10 waypoints, and I'll mark the biggest schools on that break, and then I'll just connect the dots. So I call connecting the dots. You either troll through them with jigs, pitch jigs, whatever you want to do, but at least you have an idea of where the fish are so that you can be ready when you get to them. To kind of help you out there, it's dual transducers. You don't have to, but it makes it more convenient. Biggest screen you can afford. Follow the settings that we popped up there, and you can have good, clean images just like this.
Brad spends a lot of time on the water. He is an expert when it comes to dialing in side imaging. There's links below in the description for the products featured today, as well as a link for our sweepstakes up on Lake Vermilion. That's a big fish factory. You can win an all-expenses-paid trip up there, a guided fishing trip with myself, and a hand-selected tackle pack from Omnia Fishing. And we can all help to avoid the spread of aquatic invasive species. Anytime you leave any body of water, remember, clean, drain, dry. If you have any comments regarding today's episode, let us know down below. And here's another video from AnglingBuzz.